Ajiri, thank you so much for joining our podcast. And, as I'd mentioned before, I am just absolutely in love with your book, Joie, or
Thank you.
Joie, or Joie, or
Joie. No, it's perfect. Joie.
Joie. I love it. And, I read your book recently, all the way through. I have a copy here. And I was just absolutely taken aback by the things you were saying, because it's everything I've always desired to just do, and kind of relook at even my life on a daily basis. And we're always running around and stuck in traffic and doing all of these things, and life goes so fast. And I just think the beauty of your book is really take it a little bit slower, look around, enjoy life. And it's crazy because this morning I was just stuck in a traffic jam for an hour. And I was thinking to myself, you've got to think about the book.
Yeah.
And just, it's okay, relax. Life is okay.
Yeah.
I love your journey and your history and the things that you have done. I know you started off in Texas and then to New York for fashion,
Mm-hmm.
and then to Paris, one of my most favorite places in the world.
Mine too now.
So tell me about your journey and how you got there.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me here on your show. I'm excited to get to talk with you and meet you. I moved to Paris. I first came to Paris as a graduate student,
Mm-hmm.
and I was studying the decorative arts. I really wanted to live here and to be here, but I really couldn't figure out how to make that work outside of, the graduate research that I was doing. It was very sad when I had to go back home.
Yeah.
Uh, but then I went back to my life in New York City, and 7 months later, I met my husband, who was, actually hired him for a job in New York City, but he lived in Paris. So it's so crazy how the universe sort of brought me right back to Paris.
That is, I love hearing stories like that, just because it's interesting how the world just has a way to kind of direct you in life. Coming from that background too, I think you were in fashion and being in New
Yes.
York City. I was actually in fashion as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So prior to real estate, I worked for a company called J. Jill out of Boston,
Yeah.
Talbots, and then I went to Nordstrom to their corporate office. And I was always fascinated by fashion. I've always loved it as a young girl. But I know it did take me to New York for a little bit,
Yeah.
and I loved the hustle and bustle of New York. But there was always something calling me back home, and that's here in Denver to be with my family and just kind of settle down for a little bit. So it's interesting. I wish it called me to Paris. But it was that's just the journey I'm on.
I loved New York City, but, I think, it was clear that my heart was here in Paris. So I'm really happy that the universe called me back here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see your home. It's so beautiful. And I know in your book, you talk about turning, a house into a home.
Hmm.
And it's so important, I think, now so more than ever, to have a space where you feel comfortable and almost safe,
Yeah.
and in this crazy world that we're living in right now. So tell me a little bit about that. How do you turn a house into a home?
I think the most important thing in your home is that you find joy in your home, in being in your home, and in being in your
Mhm.
space. So, for me, turning a house into a home means surrounding myself with things that bring me joy.
Mhm.
I want to look around my home and be able to tell a story of my travels, of my interest, of things that make me happy. I want to be comfortable in my home. So it's not about, going on the internet and immediately ordering something that everybody else has. I'm, slowly finding things that I like that speak to me. It's not about trends, right? Like you can go on the
Mhm.
internet and get inspired, or you can look at, Instagram or magazines, but really it's like, what do you like? What
Yeah.
makes you feel comfortable? It's not about, having a certain couch layout that doesn't make you feel comfortable. You want to be in your space and feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So it's about surrounding yourself with things that bring you joy. It's about, you know, being in a space that reflects you. And also it's about inviting people into your space. I think, when you invite people into your space for a tea, for a dinner, for a lunch, I think it fills your place with this sense of community and fellowship. And for me, that feels like home.
Yeah. And I know you talk a lot in your book about, vintage finds or finding those linen napkins. And I know you have a business too on the
Yeah,
side.
I
And
do.
I want to get on there on your website and shop from you as soon as I
Yay.
can. But you really inspired me that over, I think it was on Sunday, I just stepped out for a little bit. There's a store, not too far from here called the Paris Vintage Market. And I
Hmm.
went in and I was looking around and they had these vintage napkins. And I thought, you know what? I want to buy these because I always use paper towels as napkins.
Oh, yeah.
And so I thought, I am going to Joie my life, and I'm
Yeah.
going to get those vintage napkins that were on the sale pile.
Yeah.
And I did. And I felt so excited and happy that I want to use them. And I'm
Yes.
going to, even if it's,
That's
pancake
perfect.
breakfast on the weekend.
Yes.
So, do you have a piece in your home? And I love your home too. Do you have that one piece where you're like, oh, that story, or I remember that day, or maybe something that belonged to your great grandmother? Do you have a piece like that?
I have many pieces like that. I
Yeah.
would say my house is really just this layer upon layer of things that I absolutely love, whether it's I have things from my that, I have this carved wood game that was my mother's that my
Mhm.
aunt gave me, and I have it propped up on the sideboard over there. I mean, and then speak of the sideboard is full of my glassware collection. I'm really into mix and matching
Mhm.
glassware, coupes, champagne, like vintage coupes, the full
Yeah.
champagne coupes and flutes and wine glasses. And, I buy them all around France, and they're all different cuts and shapes, and I absolutely love them. And that absolutely brings me pure joy. My neighbor was here and he was opened it to pick a glass, and he was like, which wine will bring me bonheur, which means like, happiness. He's like, which glass will bring me
Yeah.
happiness? And I think every guest comes, and it's nice because no glass looks the same. There's like, even that alone, it's like this delight and wonder when you pick a just a glass of water or wine that everyone has a different design.
Yeah, and I love the fact that when you talk about, looking for these vintage pieces, things are so expensive these days. And, I was on Instagram this morning, a little bit too early. And I've been following, just some of these Paris flea markets, and
Mm.
we've got some flea markets here too. But I mean, there's ways to go out and collect these things without having to spend an
Yeah.
exorbitant amount of money.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's great about the flea market and secondhand stores. There's so much stuff out there. There's so much out in the world
Yeah.
for you to find and repurpose.
I have a whole closet full of these things from my grandmother, but they sit there and they're getting dusty. And so I think the most beautiful thing about your book is that it has been teaching me a lot about just enjoy those things because I was very close to my grandmother.
Yeah,
She lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and
beautiful.
a very interesting woman.
Yeah.
really into the art community. And so I thought, you
Well,
know what? I'm going to relive my
yeah,
grandmother. I
you
want her
should.
stuff.
You honor your grandmother when you use them.
Yeah.
Like it almost makes me sad, the idea that these things that she loved and that were hers, that they're
Mhm.
just like collecting dust. I think like you honor her when you use them. You honor the artisan or the maker who made those when you use them. It almost, like, for me now, doesn't make sense, like, to not use them. They're
Yeah.
there for you to use. And imagine having your toast on these plates. You'll just be thinking about her and connecting with her every single day that you use them.
Yeah.
And things get broken, things die, that's just like the circle of life for humans and for objects.
Yeah.
So it's better for them to have like a wonderful life as opposed to not being used.
How do you come home and maybe cope with the stresses of life? Kids, families, all of these things. What helps you kind of recenter and refocus so that you can be the best version of yourself?
I think when I come home and you know, I like to be alone maybe sometimes. So if,
Mhm.
for example, in the morning, if, dropping the kids off, all the madness of getting everybody out the door, brush your teeth, put your shoes on, you stop doing that, we're going to be late, like
Yeah.
that's some high energy morning stuff when that happens, right? So,
Yeah.
whether it's not being in a hurry to rush back to my computer and start my day, I might, have a cafe with the parents in front of the school, or, come home and have a tea by myself and
Mhm.
read. It's or do something slow. I just
Yeah.
slow it down a bit. Uh, I am really a lover of cafe life, and
Mhm.
I love sitting at a cafe with a friend by myself, and not I don't take anything to go. It's not part of the culture here, really, to
Yeah.
take anything to go. And I love that it's not part of the culture here because, I quickly adapted to that, and it shifts it's a mind shift for you
Yeah.
to
Slow
realize
it's
you
just like
don't have to be
slowing
to go.
down. Yeah.
Yes, everything doesn't have to be to go. It does not. It
Yeah.
absolutely doesn't. You can take a minute. There is time. And with that mind shift, whether it's, me taking that time in the morning or in the afternoon, especially when I'm stressed in the afternoon, I've been doing stuff, I will just stop what I'm doing.
Mhm.
I'm going to a cafe and I'll pack up my computer. And for maybe like the first, 20, 30 minutes, I'm just going to read and chill. And then I'll get back into my work, from the cafe if I need to. But, these for me, the ways that I slow down are just slowing down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I
like taking a moment, taking time. Like the work will always be there.
yeah.
It will always be there. Taking my lunch, going to meet a friend for lunch, going to have lunch solo. It will always be there. It will be there when you come back.
Yeah.
And you're better for it. You're more productive. You're more inspired if you do these things. If you take this time to slow down, like as a writer, I'm no good as a writer if I'm constantly doing stuff, if I'm not taking time to
Yeah.
read, to go out to museums, to sit around and hear my own thoughts. Like it's
Mhm.
impossible. It's impossible
Yeah.
to create anything or to be good at your job or to be a good mother or to be a good partner if you're constantly so busy. I mean, it's just like that's science, it's facts, and you can test it for yourself.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right because you know, I feel like I'm always on the go. And I have a 9-year-old son and my husband has a company and so it's just a rat race.
Mm.
And my what is the Scandinavian philosophy?
Fuga, yeah.
Huga. I huga a lot on the weekends.
Good, that's so good.
Yeah, I have this little it's one of my favorite chairs. It's called the womb chair
Mm.
and it's got this great fabric. It's a boucle and I always sit in it And it's my little special place. And sometimes, on the weekends, people are like, why don't you sleep in, Vanessa? Nope, I'm up at 5 a.m., which is crazy. I get my cup of coffee and my blanket, and I sit in that chair and I just read and I chill out.
I love that. I love it. Love
Yeah,
it.
and I need that sanctity because during the week, it's
Yeah.
like we're going, going, going. And, I read something this morning. It's, for moms, you're a janitor all the way up to a CEO all day. You're managing the household, your work, your family. There's so many hats that you have to wear.
Yeah.
And I think with your book and the things you're doing, and I just want to tell you personally, I have literally, this is my go-to.
I call joie de vivre and the idea of joy, joie, um, think of it as your North Star.
Yeah,
Everything that you're doing should be like, you know what? I want to feel good.
yeah,
I wanted for 2 days with my family, we're just going to go here for 2 days. It doesn't have
yeah,
to be expensive, but it's the North Star. Like it's what I need right now. I had a lot of meetings, I had stuff going on. Like tell yourself that, like it's your North Star and prioritize it.
yeah,
You cultivate it, you prioritize it. And that is, it's work, but it's work that, results in sort of a better way of living, I
yeah.
think.
I turned 50 this year, and I think that's where I'm like, I gotta start grasping.
Mm.
I've lived on this planet half a century. I need to start grasping the ability to just relax, enjoy life, enjoy
Yes.
my family, my friendships, my space.
Mhm.
And, I think we're in such a society where we have to be in control of so many things, and it's constant. Like we have to make sure that our figures are this way, we look a certain way, we're working all the time.
Mhm.
And it's really nice to be able to just, to your point, we're human.
Yeah.
We just got to let it go, and
Yeah.
things will work themselves out.
And they will. And when you talk about
Yeah.
like looking a certain way, I think it's in the end of the book, I talk about, when I decided to shave my head.
Yeah.
And I put so much energy in like how I look, the makeup, the hair, everything. And when I let it go and I wanted to be like this French saying, to be bien dans sa peau, like to feel good in your skin, I wanted to
Hmm.
feel good in my skin.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I desired so deeply. And when I cut my hair, nothing changed. I had the same friends, the same people liked me, that I was doing the same things. I mean, there was times I would walk out like waiting for someone to comment about my bald head, and they would just be like, "So, anyways, and thought about me." I'm like, "Wow, nothing changed.
Yeah.
People
That's
will still like
incredible.
you. You're not like, wearing a full face and eyelashes and this and that. People will still like you. That's
Yeah.
just the fact. You just have to like test it out and you'll see. You'll be okay." And I
Yeah.
have been okay. And I feel so free to be like, this is me. This is how I look. This is, I'm not doing a million things and I'm not running around and this is me.
Yeah. And I know you started this company as well. So
Yes.
how did you do that? How did you get inspired? How did it all come to fruition? Because you have this busy fashion career, New York,
Yeah.
and you transition to something where it's an extension of you.
Yeah. Well, life is about a pivot, right?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say life is about a pivot. I would say life is full of pivots.
Hmm.
Let me rephrase that. Life is full of pivots, and we need to accept those pivots and just turn into them because you don't know what's around that corner. So I was, when I left fashion, I moved into something else, and I wasn't, had a moment where I wasn't sure what I should be doing.
Hmm.
And here I was in Paris, and, inviting people to my house was the way that I found community and fellowship because, I was trying to make new friends and I was trying to, was obsessed with like the idea of salons. And I was just,
Yeah.
inviting people to get to know them better. And I had a friend that was like, "Oh, you're so good at this. You should definitely like you should maybe do a restaurant or like also." I was like, "Oh no, I don't want to do that." But then I was like, what? I would like to like maybe do something for the table, because the table I feel like is this place where our
Mhm.
souls collide, where we come together. Like fellowship is something I grew up with, and fellowship is like it's really, really, really life, as William Morris says.
Mhm.
And so I started with, creating linens, and then I was styling the table with the linens, and somebody was like, "Oh, are you going to sell that stuff?" And I was like, "Oh no, they're just my antiques that I buy." They're like, "Oh, wait, these look."
Yeah.
I was like, "Wait a second, maybe I should also sell antiques." So then that's how it, became like linens and antiques.
So, Ajiri, what's next for you? Like, what are your plans? I wish you would come out with another book. And I read your blogs, but I'm like, what is I need another one. I've got a Joie fix or Joie fix. So
Well, what's next for me? Well, I have my Substack notes on joie that keeps me busy writing about things that I love, and things that bring me joy, that I hope bring other people joy. I am just about finishing a joie journal, which will be sort of like a guide to inspiring people to find joy and document that joy,
yeah.
weekly. And so that will be coming out next year, follow up to this book, a guide. I, I'm always posting on my Instagram, Ajiri Aki,
Mhm.
about my life and things that are happening. I'm doing a collaboration also with Modern Matter, which is a hardware company.
Okay.
It's door handles and pulls and fixes that inspired by 18th and 19th century like French hardware. So that comes out.
Is
And
that in the US or
yes,
in
in the
Oh,
US. It
okay.
is. Modern Matter in the US. So that
Modern Matter.
in May. And then I am starting to work on another book.
Awesome. Okay. I was so happy because after
Yeah,
this one, I was like, oh, she needs to write another one.
appreciate it. I
Yeah.
appreciate it for, you actually reading my book. When you write a book with a lot of pictures, you're not sure people are actually going to read it. And I'm always honored when people do actually read those words. So thank
Oh,
you.
yeah. To look forward to things and just the simplicity to be in the moment, to take a break. It's
Yes.
awesome.
Thank you so much for having me, Vanessa.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.